Hey guys, so today we're going to be reviewing the MVP or Axiom Discs CRAVE. I've never reviewed an MVP or Axiom disc on this channel, and this is the PDGA disc this year if you renewed your membership and asked for the disc as well. Honestly, the design is very cool, but let's talk about kind of the build quality first. So before even getting into the flight numbers or anything, on the rim, which I'm going to show you a kind of a close-up of, on both sides where my fingers are, there's like these little marks on the disc. Now you can tell it's not damaged or anything, but it's got like a little space or just some sort of mark there, and it honestly feels like I hit a tree and then there's kind of like a little gash in the disc. That's honestly what it feels like. And now I'm not sure if this is just this disc or maybe some other disc. Maybe it is trying to do that for the flight numbers or something. I'm not exactly sure why these little marks are here, but if you guys know, comment down below. The second thing is, we'll talk about the flight numbers now. 6.5, 5, -1, and then 1. So from the flight numbers alone, you would assume this is just like your turnover fairway disc. And let's talk about feel real quick. When I was throwing this disc, it was about 50 degrees, so a little bit colder than it is now. And honestly, with this more premium plastic, it felt a little bit slippery. Like normally I want a nice grip on my disc, so I go for a softer disc typically. But I will say right now it's a bit warmer in my room than it was when I was throwing the disc. And the disc does feel quite grippy. So if you're playing in a hot climate, I would definitely recommend a disc similar to this over a super gummy disc. Now maybe black is not going to be the best color, but I can definitely see me using a disc like this when it gets a little bit warmer. Now before we get into some throws, I kind of compared sizes to 7-speed discs because I was kind of curious, like, is there actually going to be a noticeable difference between 6.5 and 7? Because I've never really had a 6.5 disc before. Now I can say if the Cyclone is a speed 7, it is significantly larger than the other ones. Now with the T-Bird, the Innova T-Bird and the CRAVE actually is, it's hard to see, but it's actually slightly wider than a standard Innova T-Bird. Now the disc that is going to be most similar to the CRAVE flight numbers wise is the Innova TL, and these discs together honestly feel pretty close. It feels like the TL is just ever so slightly wider. 6.5 speed seems relatively reasonable. Now shape wise compared to the TL, because this is the disc with the most similar flight numbers that I have, I can say that the CRAVE is way more flat. This TL is much more domey. And basically, it's just a more domey T-Bird, maybe a few other modifications as well. But compared to the CRAVE, the TL is quite domey, and the CRAVE is quite flat. Now, one last thing before we get into throws. One more thing about the build quality of the CRAVE here is that this little thing in the middle, kind of where they cut the disc in the factory, there's a lot of material here. Now, I'm not sure if this is just an error or if this is how MVP discs normally are, but like compared to an Innova disc, I'm going to show you guys a picture in just a second, it is noticeably larger. Now, I was thinking to myself, maybe if MVP discs are typically like this, you know, this would actually be a great disc for throwing turbos, because after a couple years, that small little nub that comes with most discs kind of wears off after a little bit of time. This one would probably last a lot longer, and I could just always have it there. It's always good to have a place with your thumb, because eventually if there's nothing there, you know, you don't have as much control as you typically would. Now getting into the flight of the disc. So when I was throwing the CRAVE in the field, the first one was, you know, not the best throw, but I gotta say, maybe just because it's a brand new disc, it did have a lot more bite to it than I initially expected. It was high zeroing out, and I imagined it was going to fly kind of like this Innova TL. And for me, the TL is that turnover fairway that I throw during glow rounds. Now, of course, the plastics are way different, but the CRAVE is actually a disc that can handle a lot of torque. I was throwing a little bit harder. I was throwing a couple sidearms with it. And what I noticed is this is kind of the disc that you could throw completely flat and just get a slight slow turnover that eventually wants to fight out. So the -1 turn, I would say it's more like a 0.5 minus turn. That's kind of what I'm leaning towards, but I will say it definitely has a fade of 1. It's not hooking super hard, but it's definitely more stable than I imagined, which is definitely a good thing. And considering this is only 163 grams, you know, it definitely blew my expectations. I was expecting this to kind of be like a roller disc or something I definitely, couldn't use. Being 163 grams, I could still throw this thing. So honestly, if you throw Axiom or MVP, I definitely recommend picking one of these up. It's actually pretty nice. Anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this quick review. If you did, make sure to leave a like, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.